Okay, so we're going to be going over this sharpener here, which is manufactured by Rota-master, Rotary-master. And
the model is a Rota-master. It's made by Dual Express, or Bernhard. Bernhard makes the Dual Express. So the same company that makes the orange Dual Express grinder, reel grinder, made this product. So
okay. So with this machine, setting up the blade for the machine, I've already kind of gone through and set it up, but a few things to look at when you are setting it up. These little blocks here are called the pillows. So there's two of them, one on this side, one on this side, and the main job they have is to support the blade out here when you're sharpening. This whole blade holding mounting system here is on a tray. This tray slides back and forth. It's powered by a pneumatic cylinder in there, and it resets itself. And so as it travels back and forth, it's going to sharpen the blade from the stone, which is held in place there. So as it goes back and forth, it sharpens the blade kind of like that. There's a kind of a hose here to spray a little bit of water and cutting fluid down there to try and keep that cool. That's a little adjustment knob here, so you can just kind of set it. You don't want to spray a ton of water in there because it's just wasting it. You just need it to go on and evaporate because that's cooling the blade. This thing has a knob here. This knob allows for this whole kind of rail to slide back and forth, so you can adjust it this way. When you go to set it up, you just take the blade, set it on here. You would tighten this up, push it up against it so it's square. So you're square along here. You want to make sure that your pillow on the back side right here does not stick out beyond the edge of the blade, or where the edge of the blade will be when you're done sharpening, because otherwise when you come around with the grinding wheel, it's going to grind off your pillow back here. So you might even move your pillow back out of harm's way if you need to, or something like that. But it's better if you can have the pillow out here to support it, but if not, move it back out of the way. So pull the blade up against here. But first, before you would actually do that, you want to take this cone piece, it goes down, and it centers the blade right there. Then you can push this up against it. There's a quick locking nut that goes on here like that, and then you can tighten that up. You don't want to tighten this very tight, one, because the threads on this type of thread fastener are not designed for high torque, but second, if you tighten it up a lot, you can kind of see, because the pillows are out here and the nut is right here and there's nothing supporting it underneath, it bows the blade kind of like this. And when we bow the blade like that, our cutting edges are now at angles. So because the table is at a fixed position, the grinding wheel is at a fixed position, when I come across, I take off material, a lot of material on the end of the blade, and I leave material here. So you want to just get it just enough so it's snug and it won't move anywhere, but not so much that we bend the blade. That way we can keep a true angle. The other adjustment on this table is right here. The whole table kind of slides back and forth a little bit, like hinges back and forth a little bit like that. That way you can control you want to try and keep an even distance evenly all along here, along the grinding wheel. So if I come in here, I would leave a lot on the end, then I'd grind a lot in here, which is not something you want to do. You would want to have it more like this, where you take off a little more out there and leave a little bit more back here, which is what I'm going to try and do here, because I do not have enough travel distance to get a nice full width on the blade, so I can get this radius right here. So I'm going to take off a little bit more on the tip and leave it back here in the radius area a little more. That way we don't weaken the blade. So I'm going to check my travel distances. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to lock it down. In this machine, it's kind of a poor design, so we kind of have some sandpaper here to try and hold everything in place, because once it starts going, it starts to rattle and everything just kind of wants to go out of adjustment. There's an adjustment right here and here, so you would undo this locking knob and turn this wheel, would raise the stone up and down. That would adjust your angle. And then for the controls of the machine, it has a built-in vacuum cleaner that picks up all the sparks and dust and puts that in a vacuum down here in the cabinet. Down here in the cabinet as well, there's a water bucket and a water collection bucket. They're separate right now because we put them in there that way. Normally they would come as one bucket and recycle, but we put separate systems in there, that way we don't keep plugging the filter. We have our switch, our light, our vacuum, our on-off button here. So you have to pull this out. To change your direction of rotation, this button has to be out, your kill switch has to be out, and then if I wanted to rotate the stone counterclockwise, I would use this button. If I want to rotate it clockwise, I would use this button here. This auto traverse lever runs the pneumatics and the spray. So when I pull this out, it's running our tray back and forth and spraying the water. And I can adjust my spray. My nozzle's a little bit dirty, so when I try and tune it down, it just kind of goes everywhere and not really where I want it to, but I'll shut that off for now. So you can kind of see how it would go back and forth. On the side here, there's a wheel. That wheel controls the end feed rate. So the table, it's the table moving this way, so I can adjust the wheel. Moves the table back, and I can move it in, move the blade into the grinding stone. There's an auto index. The auto index is it will automatically end feed your blade into the grinding wheel for you. It does just a fraction of a turn each time, and so it'll make a couple passes grinding, and then it'll turn the wheel, make a couple passes grinding, turn the wheel. Back here we have an air regulator that runs the pneumatic cylinder and some flow controls, so you can control your flow speed both in and out of the mounting tray. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to pull our cover down, lock it in place, double check everything, that everything's tight. Check our angle, it's about where we want it. And I'm going to start off feeding it manually. Pull this out, turn on our vacuum, turn on our grinding wheel, turn on our auto reverse. That's our spray. Here on the side. So I'm just going to go in. I'm doing about half a turn. You don't want to go taking huge amounts off. So right there, I'm noticing I'm just lightly starting to touch the blade now. I'll take it in a little more. Taking off just a little bit more there. Take another turn. So I'm looking to make sure that I'm not going to go too far back to the radius of the blade, and that my stone is making it completely off the blade every time. So everything looks pretty good. So if I wanted to, I could stand here and keep adjusting it manually, but I don't want to do that. I want it to do it by itself. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do auto index to the right. So I'm going to move from left to right. So I'll go ahead and turn on the auto index. And now the wheel, if you look here, will turn by itself every time, just a fraction of a turn. And that's end feeding the blade into the grinding wheel. There's a stop adjustment, so you want to be able to stop it when it gets to where it's set. So I went through before and preset this stop. So when this stops, it's a lever down here hits this little block, it pushes the arm and hits a switch down here. And so when it comes across like that, the wheel no longer turns because it's off. And your in feeding is stopped. It's just going to continue doing what it's doing until I come back and shut it off. Switch sides. Stop.
So the first blade that you do, you kind of need to make sure that you're grinding even, that you've set it up. This particular one, we're grinding heavy on the far end, not much at this end over here. If this was already sharp, we had to round it in, we wanted to cut the end a little more, then we're fine. If we're trying to maintain the same parallel that it started with, then we would want to adjust it out here and tweak it slightly so that we're grinding the full length of it. So you can play with those adjustments. Once you set up the first blade, every blade after that you would just set in, lock it in place, and back it up and go to grinding. And so this particular machine is really good for multiple blades that are all the same blades. Go ahead and come back up. So if we're going to be grinding 5 of these same blades, if I'm doing 11 of these blades, then this is a great machine because I can get it set up, take the time to do all the adjustments. Once I've started it and I push go, it's grinding. I can be cleaning up the next blade while this is doing its job. I can be taking the blades off another machine, I can be changing oil, I can do anything, and I'm just listening to the machine until I hear it stop grinding because it hit my stop. Then I'm going to come here, I'm going to back the blade up, take this off, flip it around, set this back in place. All the adjustments are the same. I'm going to push start, auto traverse, grind, turn on my vacuum cleaner, and let it go. So I might bring it up until it begins the grinding process, hit go, and then I'm going to go back to my other job. So now this machine I think they told me was close to $10,000. And you're like, well, how could you ever pay for that? So if I'm at a big municipality like a park and recreation where they have hundreds of blades, and they might have the city of Portland, I was there, and they had 10 580Ds. 580D has 11 blades. So you got 10 machines with 11 blades. It's 110 blades just on the machines, plus they had extra sets of blades. Then they had a room that was just a grinding room with shelves of blades on it. And a guy's full-time job was just sharpening blades. That's what he did almost exclusively. So that was just their biggest mower. Then they had their mid-sized mowers, and they had their little mowers. So they had a lot of blades. So a guy like that, he could put it in, he could grind all of his 580D blades. Switch it over, do all of his mid-sized blades, switch it over, and he's going to be doing a lot of blades. So now instead of standing there going all day by hand and trying to get the angle right, all the sparks hitting him, he's listening to it, he's breathing the dust. But this machine, no dust really. It's got moisture, it's cooling itself. The sound, because he's got the hood down, is reduced. He's away from the machine, so the noise is away from his ears. So it's really better on his health. And now he is doing some other job. So he's actually 2 people. We don't pay this machine any benefits. There's no health insurance, there's no liability insurance, there's no all those different things that you have. You don't have to pay any of that. So if I could replace a person or a half of a person, the labor savings, when you look at all the benefit package, could pretty easily come up to $10,000. So a machine like this, being this so automated, you could pay for it in that situation. So you want to be careful that you don't just automatically discard something that costs a lot of money. Some things that cost a lot of money, in a year or two actually paid for themselves and actually start saving you money. This is not something that an occasional homeowner would buy. It's not something that a small lawn and garden business that only sharpens 10 blades a month is going to do. And if you're sharpening a lot of individual customer, single blades or a double blade or even 3 blades, it's hard to justify the setup to do that job. So this has its place, and its place is in those big grinding areas where they're doing a lot of grinding. I might be at a golf course, I have a lot of rotary mowers and a lot of the same blades, and I'm repetitively grinding them. So that's where this one would come into handy. So it's got a lot of benefits. If I was going to do it all the time, I probably would change the mechanism that holds it in place to have something a little more positive. The newer model of this does have a different mechanism, so maybe they have a different kit that you can buy to do it. If I could hold it a little different, then the machine would be really nice. Right now, because it doesn't want to grip very well, it becomes a problem. So that's the only real challenge that I have with this machine, is just how they actually hold the blade. So if we could replace that, this would be a sweet machine for large numbers of blades.
The only drawback for this machine is you can't get the blade done as quick as you could by doing it by hand with those organ grinders.
You can grind pretty aggressive with this one. You may not grind as fast because it's going to auto-index. I don't remember if there's a way of changing how fast it indexes, but because I'm not physically standing here, it doesn't really technically matter how long it takes to grind it to perfection. Because on that one I'm actually paying you to stand there. This one I'm not paying you. You're doing another job. You're doing something else. This is automated and doing that job. And so because I'm not paying you by the hour, if it's grinding a little bit slower, it's fine. And because I have water, it should be able to grind pretty aggressive. So I don't know that that's a factor.
You're getting 2 jobs done instead of 1 job.
Yeah, and 1 job it's not a person, so there's no labor and benefits and all that kind of stuff. So the person's not getting fatigued, they're not getting a strain on their arm, and there's all those issues that you can have with repetitive jobs. All those problems go away by having something that's fully automated, self-contained. So there is a benefit, there is a place for this. It's just not everywhere. It's going to be a fairly limited market. So, okay. So the last one that we're not going to be able to show you would be a belt sander. And so belt sanders, we were able to get a new style belt sander. And belt sanders are pretty nice. There's something about a belt sander that doesn't get the blade as hot. It grinds really fast, and for some reason doesn't heat the blade up as much. And so there's a company called Burr King that Oregon Saw Products is kind of partnered up with, still made by Burr King, says Burr King, but it says Oregon on it. And those, you can actually grind a blade probably 4 times faster than this one. And so there are stories out there of dealerships that had a full-time person grinding blades, and they went from 7 hours a day to 3 hours a day doing the same job. And all they did was switched from stones to the belt sander. So at some point, maybe we'll try to get you a link. We'll probably just link to a Burr King so you can see what it looks like, and you can read about it. But we'll do that with an online video that's already out there, and that'll be a difference. So that kind of covered file, grinder, bench top grinders, automated grinders, and then there'll be a separate video for the Burr King, which is a belt style. So those are some of the options that you have. You just need to kind of pay attention to what it's doing, look at what my results are, and kind of adjust from there. But for the most part, rotary blades are not hard things to grind.
Although on
so.
something like this, if you had burrs that were on the bottom, would you have to take those off first before you put it on here, or would that automatically?
I would take them off before I put them on here, and that's where the belt sander, you could take it, if you had a belt sander, you could take that and, and you took everything off the bottom. So I would do is take it to our belt sander. We have a 4-inch belt sander and just lay it on there and dress it real quick with the belt sander.
I don't know if you, addressed it, but how much does each one of those organ grinders cost?
I priced one out over Christmas break, and depends on the model. I think a mid-size is about a dealer price is about $390 to $450.
So that mid-size would be that 1 horsepower.
Right.
Right.
So then $390 for mid-size.
It might. I think the biggest one in there is about $600 dealer price.
So two other things we want to show you balancing. The other thing that I was going to talk about when I was in there, sometimes when you get a blade that's rounded really bad, rather than putting it on the machine and grinding it until you get it perfect, what I'll do is I'll grind it flat. So I grind the front face back flat until I got rid of all the rounded. And then when I put it in the machine, I'm going to be grinding this until I get the square down almost to a razor point. And it's easier to reach that point. When am I going to hit that point? And when you grind that surface off the front and you just take rid of that metal, the top will grind faster because instead of cutting this much, I'm cutting this much. So you can actually speed the process up and know where am I going to end up by just taking and grinding it vertical, which is what we're going to do at the end anyway. So grind it vertical till you get rid of all the round. Then the bottom goes flat, it goes straight up, and then you've got your piece on the top. So I've actually ground that and then taken it to the grinder and ground it until I have that 20 thousandths flat edge left, and then I quit. And it's easier to judge, am I really there, am I really there, am I really there, because you're constantly checking. It's a lot easier to see that flat edge than trying to look underneath to see if I'm still rounded. So that's a way that I've done to actually speed the process up. So blade balancer, I'm going to slide over this way. So this is an automated blade balancer. There's lots of blade balancers. You can go buy a cheap plastic pyramid that you can put them on. You can stick a nail in a vise and hang it on there. This is a fairly expensive one, fairly nice one. This is on roller bearings. You take it off. This slides in and out. There's a cone, so no matter which style you have, it gets on the cone, so you slide it out, and then you want to make sure that when you slide it in, it's caught. You want to make sure that you get it all the way in on that cone. So if you're out here and I'm offset, then it's naturally going to be heavy on this other side. So the secret, probably the biggest problem that I've seen people do, is they don't get this all the way in on the cone when they stick it on. So then I'm just going to stick it on here, hold it sideways, let go. If one side's been ground more than the other, the heavy side always goes down. This little wire thing here is to see if it's bent. So I bring it out till it just touches the blade. So it's just touching there. And then I spin around to the next blade, and it should also just touch. So the purpose of this is to check for bent blades. That's the only purpose of it. So other than that, I want to see if it's balanced. If it's balanced, it'll sit flat. If it's not, it's heavy. Typically what I'll do is either grind a little bit more off this surface, or I can grind a little bit off the very end of it. So the further you go out, take a little bit of metal, faster it's going to balance. So don't take it off the sail. You can take it off of here, and usually it's because you didn't grind enough on that side. So grinding a little bit more is fine.
Wouldn't it cause the other side, though, if we grind on the end off to balance it, wouldn't it cause this edge to wear faster, because this edge coming around is cutting more material than that side?
If you grind a lot off, yes. So that's why if you're grinding 3 strokes, 3 strokes, 3 strokes, like on the hand grinder, you'll keep them even. So you need to visibly look at it. If visibly you're like, man, I didn't grind as much off of here, then take it off the surface. If I've taken it off and they're both sharp and it's just slightly out of balance, then I'll just take a little bit off of here. And we're only talking about like the outside 1/8 inch or something, so not that big a deal. So it becomes, you just need to use some logic, lose some visibly look at it and decide what you got before you just assume. And I always take it off there. Well, don't always, because always may not be our situation today.
Right.
So just kind of look at each one, make a decision and go with it. So, okay? That's it. Thank you.